How do fees on my IUL affect my actual returns? Welcome back. This is episode 14 of our Secrets to a Tax-Free Growth series. A lot of people, one of their biggest hangups with IULs is the fees. They're so expensive. There's so many early year fees a lot of people complain about. They destroy my returns. Is this actually true? And what does it look like over a long period of time versus other vehicles? So to answer these, we want to go over three things in today's video. The first one that we're going to go over is tackling that question head on of the early year fees. What actually are they? Why are they so expensive in the early years? How does that affect later on? Second, we're going to break down the different actual fees. So what are the names of them? Like, where is my money going? And then third, what we are going to look at is over a 30-year time horizon, how did those early year fees actually affect my long-term rate of return? The very first thing that I am always quick to point out to anyone who is considering IUL is the very objection that many people make: early year fees. If you are looking into IUL for a short-term solution, it's probably not for you. At a bare minimum, what I usually recommend to people is if you can't stick to, let's say it's just a monthly amount, for example, at least 5 years of putting that in before you have to completely stop contributing to the policy, probably not a good idea. It's not going to be something where we can put money into a mutual fund for 2 years, try and get a little bit of return, and then pull out the entire thing, expect it to have grown, and then go and use that somewhere. That's not what the IUL is. These early year fees are going to have an effect on our growth. In fact, it actually might take a couple of years to even break even before the policy is actually able to perform well. Now, that's not to say if you are someone who is looking to, for example, do a strategic rollout out of IRAs or 401ks and wants to start taking income within 3 years, that rules you out. Absolutely not. As long as you're still funding that policy for the full 5 years, it may slightly affect your rate of return. It's just going to depend situation to situation. But as long as you're funding for the full time and getting the amount of money in that you plan to, you can still access your money early. But for people who are wanting to put a bunch of money in and pull all of it out right away, that's not going to be the vehicle for you. Now, if you're someone who's going to fund it with $1 million over 5 years and you want access to $80,000 a year starting in year 3, well, that's much more reasonable because we're taking out a much smaller amount. We're not pulling all of our money out that we just put in. The good news is with these early year fees, and this is going to bring us to our second point, is they are completely transparent. You just have to run an annual cost summary, and then you can also run an internal rate of return summary with your illustrations. Sometimes the agent will actually have to turn these on, so make sure they always do. But when you run the annual cost summary, for example, you are able to look at in each individual year, based off how much money you're putting in, what that premium is going to, and then you can see how that actually affects your internal rate of return over time that we'll get into in our third point. Now, it's always going to vary based on which company you go with, which carrier, which product. But in general, the reason that IULs are so much more expensive in the early years is because, similar to a mortgage where you might be paying off all of the interest initially, it's similar with an IUL. They're usually getting the fees over and done with within the first 15 years. Some are getting them over and done within the first 5 years. If that's something that you prefer, there's specific products for that. Some 10, some 15, it just varies. But these range from our premium loan charge. So when we put money into the policy, there's always going to be a charge there. Our annual policy fee, these are usually $120 a year, super small. There's any rider charges. If you did decide to add any additional riders, these are generally very cheap. There's your per 1,000 base. This is going to be the fee that's usually done within 5 to 15 years, kind of depending on how you structure it. And then, of course, most importantly, there is the cost of insurance. Now, another one of the biggest objections that people will give when they're looking at IUL and talking about their fees is that the cost of insurance is so high. They say, as I'm getting older, well, of course, the cost of insurance is going to get more expensive because I'm more likely to die. Therefore, when my money's growing, I'm also going to have to be paying more and more for insurance. So IUL is out of the picture. I'm not going to have my cash value get eaten into by this cost of insurance. Now, there's something right with this objection. There's something wrong with this objection. What's correct is as we get older, of course, our cost of insurance is going to go up. That being our cost per $1,000 of insurance that we're paying for. Now, what's wrong about that and what it doesn't consider is that even though our cost per $1,000 of insurance that we're paying for goes up, is that we're actually going to be paying for less and less insurance as our cash value continues to grow. How does that happen? Now, let's say we had a death benefit of $1 million and we funded the policy with $500,000 over the course of 5 years. Well, once that policy is fully funded and that $500,000 in cash value starts to grow towards the million doesn't go up as well. The million stays. So if the cash value is getting closer to the $1 million, the only cost of insurance we're paying for is the difference between our cash value and our death benefit. So if the death benefit stays at $1 million, the cash value is at $500,000, that's how much insurance we're paying for, $500,000 worth of insurance. But as our cash value grows and that gap gets smaller, we pay for less and less insurance. Therefore, actually over the long haul, insurance as a percentage of your cash value is actually getting cheaper over the years. So you understand those early year fees, you understand what those fees are actually going towards. Now the big picture, what does this actually do to my policy over the course of 30 years? The key thing to note there is I say over 30 years because they're long-term vehicles. Within 30 years, here's an example of a nationwide policy that I was running the other day where you can see the net internal rate of return after 30 years is 5.30% and the illustrated rate was 6.3%. That means even though I was projecting that they were going to earn 6.3% a year, they actually only gained 5.3% a year after every fee, commissions, premium loan charge, cost of insurance. And that is a 1% fee over the course of that 30 years that's actually going to continue to decrease beyond 30 years. If you were to die earlier, of course, you would get a much higher rate of return than that. So you can compare that to an advisor, for example, that's already going to have a 1 to 1.5% fee every single year. And that money is what's most important to consider, like I mentioned, is that money is yet to pay federal taxes, state taxes, all of that is to come. Even if you earn a 9% rate of return, which is maybe higher than what you're going to earn in the IUL over the course of the period of time, is it actually higher once you consider in first the fee is for the advisor and second, the taxes. So again, if it's something you're using as a short-term solution, the fees will be something to turn people away. I agree, you should not be using the IUL as a short-term solution. If you have the long-term view of being able to let the money grow, take retirement income, access the money as you want, put it towards a business venture, whatever it is, but you're going to keep it in force, you're going to fully fund it. That is where, when we're patient and we keep it in force, the concern people have of the fees being too high completely evaporates. So there you have it. Any form of life insurance, of course, is going to have the fees that come along with that. But instead of getting the life insurance so that you can have the most death benefit possible, if you instead say, I want to pay the most premium for the least amount of death benefit, use that for cash value, a lot of those fees over the life of a policy start to disappear and actually in a lot of cases end up being a benefit because if you do pass away early, then that cash value is not only going to pass on to your heirs tax-free, but it's going to grow to whatever the death benefit is and that will pass on tax-free. So not only is the fee of 1% over the course of 30 years already a big advantage compared to the fees and taxes we might have to pay with an advisor, but when we do pass away, that money is also going to blossom and transfer tax-free to our heirs. All right, so there you have it. We went over the fees for the IUL. The video before, we went over the 4 keys to a prudent investment. Now that you understand those, let's actually look at how does this compare to other vehicles. We go over all of that in our next episode. I will see you there. Bye-bye.